just like in the movies.
Welcome to Super Wonder Legacy. I am Jared. I'm here with Britt. What's up, Britt?
Hello, hello.
And today we are comparing. We're actually doing a Marvel comparison this week. So we're comparing Superman and Wonder Woman, as usual, because that's kind of the point of the show. And Black Panther and Storm. Oh boy, here we go. So if I can get my PowerPoint to work, every single week this happens. So
Technology at its finest.
yes, at its worst, honestly. So
Well, yeah.
all right, here we go. Let me see if this can work. Come on, please work. Okay, now it's working. Now it's working. All right, good. Hey, what's up? You already know my saying, Jerry. Yeah, I know, Robert. We'll see if we can convince you. And what's up, Cameron Bailey? Yeah, so Black Panther and Storm. So, Britt, you want to start us off?
Okay, so within these two couples, why we chose them, of course, is that we're doing just a comparison and the idea of crossovers between DC couples and Marvel couples. So with this couple, it was actually a tweet that I saw a few weeks ago, and it was giving the timeline of Black Panther and Storm's relationship and how they met and everything in their marriage, divorce, and with seeing the comments of how some fans criticize the relationship. And it's kind of like that is very similar to how they criticize Clark and Diana, how they make it seem so superficial. And
Yeah.
it's some things that is like, no, you know, um, when you get down to the history of both of them, they are, and what we enjoy about relationships is their friendship, and that build of trust and those similarities that they have. But some fans, they are very hypocritical and have these double standards for these couples. So here we are kind of given a little bit more depth that obviously is always missing from those arguments on social media. And just seeing that, yeah, these two couples, it, they want to demonize oh, they're so obvious, and it's kind of like, well, yeah, isn't that should be a good thing because that means that they are natural, that they are, yeah, that they have this natural connection. And that is something that really in reality relationships are based on as well.
Yeah, exactly. And Byron Daniel says, notice how Aurora and T'Challa come from different tribes in African countries like Diana and Clark. Yeah, exactly. And we'll get into that. So, all right. So the interesting thing is that royalty does play into a sort of part by Robert. Actually, it's not necessarily like it was a recent retcon in there. So I'll get into that as we go on. But still, so in terms of with Superman and Wonder Woman and Black Panther and Storm, and yeah, Britt, exactly. It is kind of like they're both like the obvious ones, and then there are also really superficial reasons why people critique these two couples, and it's actually really interesting with that.
Yeah, and you also have these different perspectives that they give each other. And like here, it's that, they when they first meet, and I was actually very surprised, at that their first meeting was kind of like um DC Presents 32.
Mm-hmm.
And when you know that these, or even the beginning of Post Crisis for Clark and Diane, how they built up this instant attraction. They were ready for their first date, and then it all falls apart, and it's kind of like you feel this force of, uh, or a contrivance to say that, oh no, even though they seem natural, but they can't be together at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Storm and Black Panther, their first meeting and the first story that they had of them teaming up together, and they were naturally in sync, but then they, uh, were forced apart. And
Exactly. And they're forced apart for very contrived reasons as well. So
Yeah. And what I also see is that is basically how Clark and Diana is the right person, wrong time type of thing, or, building, they acknowledge their romantic feelings, but they want to build up a friendship first, which is always good.
Mhm.
You always want to have that solid foundation of a friendship. It's just the fact of the drama that goes with it, or the editorial interference of, but we still can't put them together for, again, contrived reasons.
Yeah, exactly. So, as you guys know, so first we'll start with Superman, Wonder Woman, then we'll get to Black Panther and Storm. So for Superman, Wonder Woman, yeah, they have explored this in like a lot of different realities, which is actually it's really interesting how Brit, whenever they have like an Elseworlds reality, have you noticed that 9 times out of 10, this is the relationship they explore for Clark and Diana?
Right. It is the base the alternative, because with the main continuity, they have their set tradition. They have their own separate mythologies, and even though they are under the same umbrella of DC, they're still different franchises. So that pretty much is the stumbling block for Superman and Wonder Woman. But I honestly, because of everything that we've seen with main continuity and how messy it is, I would prefer it be under Elseworlds, because you can take creative liberties and, have um, no limitations. You know, with New 52, it was a fresh start, fresh take, but you can see how they still set limits. And it felt like especially what Dan Didio said, that they are scared and lazy, you know, that was pretty much felt. That they
Yeah.
took this big swing, and they did take the risk, and it was successful. It was, you know, it met the expectations and succeeded the expectations. But after a while, with letting go of Charles Sewell and bringing in Tomasi, it he pretty much um, ruined the momentum, and now we're stuck with basically them being very middling, and hyping up stuff that's very uh, is is they're basically spinning their wheels on the same thing, old house, new paint type thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so then we get to yeah, exactly, alternate reality. They've always, for the most part, whenever there is an alternate reality, it's always one. It's if you notice with the alternate reality, yeah, sometimes it starts off with Lois, but it always ends up being Diana. I always find that very interesting.
And they always say that it's pretty much inevitable, from DC Presents 32. It was a story where Eros, at that time, he wasn't Diana's cousin.
Hmm.
So he was jealous that she didn't have feelings for him. So he, put a spell on her. She ended up falling for Clark by accident, or he did it on purpose, to basically have them feeling a heartbreak. So they're basically going back and forth with the 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 spell, and it feels like those feelings are just from the spell, but at the same time it felt like, no, those might be real feelings too. And how, with knowing that they needed to break the spell, how sad they were, but at the same time, it was still that narrative that it might be something there. Then you have where Barry, within the mod era, how Diana left the JLA, and Barry saying that he thought that Clark and Diana would marry. You have Kingdom Come, you have Wonder Woman 170, I think it was 141, my bad.
Hmm.
And when they have the Trinity Dream, then you have Immortal Wonder Woman, even though it was very ambiguous, Conrad. but you still have those moments within there too. Then of obviously New 52, Kingdom Come, Frank Miller's uh verse, everything, Distant Fires, just these most of the stories, yes, you will have some type of Clark and Diana romantic type hint there.
Well,
Even
didn't you also have it in that one like McDuffie JLA issue where Vixen is like traveling to like kind of an alternate reality, and then Superman and Wonder Woman are together?
yeah, and they're married, but the the only thing that kind of peeves me is that Clark and Diana's relationship is you have to have tragedy within it.
Hmm.
Like they do have these happy endings sometimes, but there is they and I guess that's because the limitations and the risk being taken is that they have the tragedy within it. So yeah, like what you mentioned with Vixen, that her Clark died of, I think, Doomsday,
Yeah,
and
Doomsday.
he didn't come back to life. You know, that kind of thing. I was like, every other Superman that dies of Doomsday, he comes back. So why all of a sudden, because he's with Diana, he can't come back? Things like that. We have the Crisis animated movie where Earth 2, older Clark and Diana are together, even though it was very much a hand wavy type thing of him having to be with Lois. It was still more so shown that he was with Diana.
Yeah.
And then we have even World's Finest 30. That little panel hint right there
Hmm.
of Diana blushing because of Clark. Just things like that. It really does build up to the relationship, or build the ship, and have those moments to justify why they have been a focal point, for some fans.
Exactly. So then we get some main continuity, which main continuity, it's only ever been like in continuity like once. Now, here's why I bring, and by main continuity, I mean they're actually together. It's not like some weird dream or anything like that.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. This is why I always bring up this whenever I say that a Super Wonder would be successful. If they ever were to do it again, let's say the stars align, because the time they did it, it was successful and it worked. That's the
Exactly.
thing. And whenever I see people saying about and Britt, I know this annoys the crap out of you, so I don't think I have to tell you. When people say that like they just turn into gods, and I'm like, okay, read the actual books and not the edgy boys fan fiction that is Injustice.
Either injustice, or they continue on with um taking um everyone else's opinions from social media. It was
Mm-hmm.
one Superman fan that had to read New 52, the entirety of New 52 Superman. And of course he remains biased, wants to push the whole, oh yeah, Chloe was going to be together. They was doing this slow burn thing. But it's kind of like, no, even when he was reading through, he took things out of context. Like even if it was a panel or something, it was from a book where it's kind of known that that writer was pushing something that was the total opposite of what was actually going on, especially with Lobdell. In the Wonder Woman book, how Diana kissed Orion, and it was
Oh
basically that
God.
moment. Yeah, it was a moment of sexism and assault, first of all. And Lobdell, for contrived drama, tried to make it seem like Diana and Orion were having something going on too.
That's
Things
right. Pair the paragon of feminism with a dude that just calls her legs.
exactly. So it's things like that that it was taken out of context, but at the same time, he did admit that he took other people's opinions, then formed his own. And that is one of the main
Hmm.
problems of the fan bases on social media is that they don't form their own opinions. They want to follow the crowd, even if they know that there's a chance that and especially these pages or accounts that have a quote unquote big following. I would say 5,000 followers plus, that they consider that, of course, a big page, and they pretty much force their own biased opinions and as facts. And then you
Because
have
they want
other
those likes. They want the dopamine
right,
hit.
and you have these fans that don't read, so they think that, oh, because you are a quote unquote big account, you must know what you're talking about.
Yep.
If and even if you post this panel out of context, it must be just the whole truth. So
You know what
they
I did
have
once,
this.
Britt? This
Mhm.
maybe I have a streak of being petty, right?
Yes, you do.
So you know what I did? So when someone put in the post, it's one of those Wonder Woman accounts. You know which one it is. I'm not gonna like name it, obviously, but you know which one. I can tell you after this. But
Hmm.
so someone like posted in the comments, "Thank you for showing us how Wonder Woman's supposed to be." So me, I post in there. Actually, she's really weighing in on how her ideal version of Wonder Woman is.
Right. I mean,
That's what it is. I mean, you're allowed to have your own ideal version of these characters. That's the
but you
advantage of
don't.
having like so many different versions. But if you treat that one as absolute gospel, then we got a problem.
Right, because you are, again, you are forcing your opinion. And then when your opinion or, that version that you've created in your mind doesn't align with what's actually being shown and given within the comics, you have peeved, fans. And it's kind of like, well, you did it to yourself, you know, but and they also want to argue with facts, especially when it comes to Clark and Diana's relationship. We can show tons of panels, and like I said, even the most recent World's Finest, of them having that moment, and you have fans that still want to argue against it. You know,
It's astounding. By the way, Britt, your boy got an idea.
of course you did. Of
So
course you did.
continuing. So there was also controversy with Superman and Wonder Woman. So I like this page because because I think that this page summarized the public's reaction to Superman and Wonder Woman. Some were like, "Oh, this is great." Others were like, "This isn't going to turn out well."
Yeah, and that is a natural response. You want to have that um, pretty much that 50-50 type of conversation. You don't want everyone just following and accepting like a bunch of sheep. You don't want that, because that's when you become stagnant. That's when people don't come up with ideas. They're just stalled and settled within you know, this one opinion. You need to have different perspective. And yeah, some of them go too far with the negativity and go way off the deep end of trying to demonize the relationship. But at the same time, you have a lot of positivity and people who are very sane and have articulate their opinions, whether it is for or against. And that's what you want. You want that healthy conversation. Um, and like I said, Superman and Wonder Woman was successful. We have the numbers before Comic Con dismantled, and we have articles that say that New 52 and Superman and Wonder Woman was successful. But again, even with us presenting this, there are still some that want to turn a blind eye. And it's kind of like, no, at some point you got to stop doing that.
Which Britt,
Especially,
so it's kind of funny. The one thought bubble that, by the way, summarizes this perfectly is the one that says the message boys are going to have a field day.
exactly.
And my other favorite, this is why I love this page. So up here, this is why I loathe Steve Trevor and why I was celebrating when he was shot dead. when you have this part where Amanda Waller's like, "So it's out. You okay, Steve?" He goes, "Why do you ask that? We already knew we were together." And then Waller says, "Because frankly, now the world knows she went from him to you." And then Steve, like a part of the male body, I'll leave it up to you which one I'm referring to. You know, Amanda, my values are not determined by whether or not I happen to be dating Wonder Woman. I'm more concerned about about what happens if they break up. What's Superman going to do if she drives him away? And then it got cut off, but Wallace says, "You sure that's going to happen?" And Steve goes, "It's what she does."
You know, and that's the thing is that with Steve, there's a lot of like they want to glorify the traditional relationships, but Steve and Lois treat Clark and Diana badly, and they talk about them badly.
Yeah, in
And
this, she is a B word to Clark. And by the way, this is the Golden Age Superman. So tell me I don't
and
read comics.
right, and or that your shelf is just
Yeah,
decorations.
no, it's right there. Flex, baby.
Um, but the fact that Steve was very much like you said, a stalker, possessive, he even in the encyclopedia, how he basically was within the JLA, teamed up with Waller to create a counter for the Justice League because he was peeved and jealous that Diana was with Clark. And then with Rebirth, you know, their
It gets
relationship.
worse, Britt. You're forgetting one particular part. Remember in the villain's journey when Steve's sister was blasting Diana? You broke up with him. You crushed his self-worth.
Right. It's kind of like Steve's justification, and it's true that, yeah, he felt like Diana was basically glorified as this, you know, prize for him within New 52, and because she broke up with him. And this Diana was very young. She was 18 when she left the island. She wasn't really with Steve for a long time. It was probably like a year maybe. And once she realized that, you know, um it was kind of like I I need to understand my feelings, you know, and understand romance because he was the one. And I blame Jeff Johns for writing Diana that way,
Yeah.
but she didn't know she didn't know what hand holding was. So
I'm like, I'm
Steve,
pretty sure they hold hands on the mascara.
right, so Steve took advantage of that, of her being so young and innocent, and he wanted to basically mold her to accept everything that he told her. And once she, you know, became had a mind of her own, he didn't like that. And then you have a rebirth where he guilt tripped her and with saying that, you know, you were with Superman, you know, why should you be with me? And Diana had to basically say that she didn't know what she wasn't good with love and romance, and being with Clark was easy, but she still didn't actually grasp that of loving Steve. Then you have where now Tom King is basically acting like Steve is the love of Diana's life when they weren't even together, you know, before he kennied him, you know. So
Can't eat him.
you know, so it's like you're pushing these traditional relationships in such a contrived way, and you are forcing the idea that just because they are within the mythos that, you know, this is what we supposed to accept as fans, and with their role being the love interest, you can throw you can pour a lot of sugar honey iced tea and we're supposed to drink it. No.
And Robert, I think with the whole Woman editors, I think that if you're getting that from the Superman editorial, I think they're trying to deflect blame. That's the thing. And
No,
yeah,
Wonder Woman.
and by real quick, I want to address this. Atchison, yeah, to Byrne, but Byrne's opinion on Superman should not be taken for two reasons. Number one, xenophobia, and number two, Superman making out with a 14-year-old girl.
Right. Actually, Wonder Woman has never actually had like separate editors. Like she's under the Superman editorial. She
Yeah.
has her own editor, but I believe she's an associate editor, not the group editor. And most of the time, Clark and Diana's relationship is way more valued and respected on Diana's side. So it is very much the Superman side that makes it so difficult. And honestly, with having the respect and the buildup was from Perez, who is the golden standard writer for Wonder Woman, that pushed the relationship for them in post crisis, and even wanted Clark to basically be Diana's first.
Robert
And
said post-crisis Wonder Woman had her own editorial team.
well, it still was. That's what I'm saying, is that she has an editor, but at the same time, within that group, though, within that umbrella, she's still under Superman. So, uh, whatever that, however that works. But it's still the fact that on Wonder Woman's side, though, this relationship has much more respect than when you go from the Superman side and you see how Diana is treated, and pretty much how it is also ignored from the Superman side because of the status quo.
Yeah, exactly. Because they don't want Lois's place to be threatened. That's why. So, anyway, continuing on to the next one, cultural and narrative impact. And I promise the next slide is Black Panther and Storm. We're getting there. We have to establish the context first. So, then we get the interesting thing is like the funny thing about this is that when you look at like cosplay and stuff, and this is getting into the cultural impact, but couples cosplay about 9 times out of 10, it's Superman and Wonder Woman, because Lois is just gender bent Clark. You can't really cosplay her effectively without zooming in. I have to zoom in order to see like the name tag that says Lois.
Yeah, she has to have a press badge. You know, the thing is with Clark and Diana's relationship, and of course with me having the Instagram, I see a lot of cosplays, a lot of weddings, a lot of maternity, pregnancy photo shoots. Um, Clark and Diana uh, being within Halloween, within other celebratory functions, festivals, anything like that, and the diversity, the different ethnicities, the different races or sexual orientations. You don't see that a lot, or if at all, with the traditional pairings. And like you said, no one is going to really cosplay as Steve and Lois. Steve, they did with uh the movie, but at the same time, I mean, wearing a turtleneck, a green turtleneck, and it pretty much looked like Indiana Jones. That's,
Yeah. Or if you do nowadays, you'll be accused of stolen valor because you have to wear a military uniform.
exactly. And with Lois, she's just wearing everyday, regular business suit clothes, or even just jeans and a t-shirt or something like that. And as long as it's purple or something, then it's not really anything distinctive. Or she's wearing a dress, and she has to get carried. That's the only pose that they can do with Superman and Lois. So it's nothing actually culturally or uh, impactful in a societal way. But Clark and Diana, with their established, you know, character of being outsiders, of being the refugee and the immigrant, you can feel that, especially within today's climate politically, of how people want to preserve their culture and they want to learn of their ancestry and stuff like that. And that is what Clark and Diana, or especially Diana, that she honors. And she is and represents that.
Yeah, because when you go, this was the other thing that made me really push away from Lois. Because what I noticed is that whenever Superman's with Lois, he seems, and this could be the way the writers write it, they seem to have him thumb his nose at his Kryptonian heritage, and I'm like, I'm sorry, that doesn't work. Where with Diana, it's more like embrace everything you are. Now, speaking of uniqueness, then we get to Black Panther and Storm.
Okay, so with this couple, as I told you before we started, um, Marvel gladly did have a write up of their relationship. And from what I read, of like I said, within prior weeks, with seeing that tweet and seeing how the similarities of this relationship is also about culture and is honoring the culture, and it's not even in a negative light. Going back to Clark and Diana, how they are perceived as gods, just because you are otherworldly doesn't make you a god, doesn't make you seem like you're better than anyone else. It's just everyone is unique. And just because you are celebrating that also doesn't mean that you're better than anyone. You were just being happy with yourself. So
Exactly.
this is what with Black Panther and Storm's relationship, it showed black excellence. It showed these two powerful black, yes, prominent, well-known characters, and it it gave black fans this sort of I can see myself. I
Exactly. And
um
by the way, Taylor Love, it's about the only good thing that Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote at Marvel, because I remember he wrecked Captain America.
um yeah, so that is what these relationships are about, and what I think so many fans, it honestly feel like they choose to ignore that type of positive impact and purpose of the relationships. So go ahead, Jared, and tell me about this couple.
Okay, so this is one of those things where they've been on and off in terms of being together, but for the longest time in like the era of Marvel that I was reading, they were together. And it goes beyond like sometimes they do get accused, because I think Reggie Hudland did say that one of the reasons why they were put together is because they were the two prominent black characters. And I'm like, okay, fine. They probably made the decision based on like superficial reasons, but just because the reasons may be superficial does not mean the couple itself is superficial.
Right. I mean, they are, again, how can you say that being obvious is a bad thing, but yet you have fans about to bust arteries because if you stray from the traditional relationships, and they say this this character has to always be with this character, or they have this expectation, just like the absolute universe. They expect that, even though it said that the characters aren't supposed to be um where they are in main continuity, or where you think they should be, um or like what Aaron said, that it's wrong. And I still, again, I don't really consider that it's just a different universe.
Mhm.
But if you have this expectation, that's just as obvious. That's that. So what makes that different when you say that Superman should always be with Lois, and then you put Superman and Wonder Woman together as obvious in the negative light? Like that,
Exactly.
you know.
Well, here's the thing. So here's the thing about Storm. Why it also works for her to be a Black Panther, because so there was a period. So she was like the first. I think she was the first black character to lead a prominent Marvel team, because there was a period where she was the leader of the X-Men. Like
Yes.
legit, it was just her. So it's like she and T'Challa have this like relationship in that. Now, as Robert brings up, there some people, there was backlash because she seemed to take second fiddle to T'Challa, but I'm like, because she was in the Black Panther book. It has to be about him. It's like Wonder Woman's gonna take second fiddle if she's in the Superman book. But the reason why they were treated as equally in Super Wonder is because they were co-leads of the book.
I would say there's a difference between second fiddle and just like support, like a guest star within the book. If
Mm-hmm.
it's that they have a team up book, of course they're going to be equally 50-50. But if if it is a main Black Panther book or main Storm book, main Superman book, main Wonder Woman book, then yeah, they're just going to be guest stars. And
Yeah,
whether they are in a relationship, or teasing a relationship, that is, you know, basically how it's going to go. So it's not so much as playing second fiddle, it's just more so like the supporting role or a glorified cameo, or something like that. So again,
exactly.
this is something that fans have to dissect a little bit more before raging, you know.
Exactly. And Robert brings up, but she was taken away from the X-Men for a while, and I'm like, or reducing her role, and I go, and but
I would say that within the X-Men, from what I see, they still wanted her to have a leading role. It's
mhm,
just with trying to fit, you know, I I still wouldn't say that she was reduced because it doesn't seem like it. It seemed like she still was very much a prominent known character for herself. It's just that because she is known as X-Men and you feel like that is her setting, and when she becomes in a wider setting, with different storylines, then maybe it is sort of uh, the perspective does change a little bit. But I
mhm.
still don't see that she was reduced. The reduction is, in a sense, kind of how like Black Canary and Green Arrow. Green Arrow, Black Canary is very much a supporting character for a long time with Green Arrow, and she's just now sort of becoming more prominent for herself. Or that, the only time she really became a lead was even in a Birds of Prey or something like that. When she was in JLA, she was the leader, but
Mhm.
you still have these Green Arrow fans that think that she's supposed to be just Green Arrow's wife or, that support. And now, even in the Green Arrow book, she feels like that. She feels like just the girlfriend. Um,
And
or
what's
brought,
hilarious, so she essentially has become the Lois Lane, because remember how like Lois, and by Robert, Claremont's entitled to his opinion. That's fine. But just because a creator, no matter how like prominent with the book, thinks it's a bad idea, doesn't necessarily mean anything, because that's just his opinion. That's it. I respect the hell out of Claremont. Yes, he was. Uh, Actually, he wasn't the creator of Storm. He defined her. But the point is like, yeah, it's the same thing if like someone said, well, Mark Waid didn't like Zack Snyder's opinion on Superman. And I'm like, so that's just Mark Waid's opinion. If you need writers' opinions to validate your own, if you need, like we said before, if you need other people's opinions in order to validate your own or in order to shape your own, that's an issue there. But anyway, so going back to this, where was I? Oh yeah, but yeah, but continuing on. So
I think
yeah, go ahead.
some writers, okay, so what I see is, and we have this with Superman and Wonder Woman. It's like, again, you are presented with these instances, these alternate storylines, some panels, or with the main continuity for both DC and Marvel's, Superman and Wonder Woman, or Black Panther and Storm. These couples work naturally. However, for writers to push, but it's a bad idea, look at their preferences though, their own preference. And okay, you're only saying it's a bad idea because you want this character to be with another character. However, that couple, may not work, you know, as good as this couple does. So you want to project your feelings upon the preferred pairing not working and want to, down this pairing to elevate the other pairing. And that's the same thing as what happens with Clark and Diana all the time for Chloe, is that, you know, you see how within even Death of Superman animation, how Clark and Diana, in the first half of that animated universe, Clark and Diana was full speed ahead of being an established couple. They you saw them grow to trust and be honest with each other. And then Death of Superman, you have Clark total 180 of his character. It was all about Lois, how he trusts her, she knows him even though she doesn't know his secret identity, how and to use Diana as a mouthpiece to say that their relationship was nice, but at the same time it wasn't meant to be. It's things like that that you have to look at with these writers, is that yeah, you're going to feel like, oh, because the writer says so, or because they have the character say so, then that's the thing. However, with looking at the content, that it's showing the total opposite.
And by the way, Robert, Claremont, yeah, Chris Claremont did tease like Storm and Wolverine being a couple, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I do not see that at all.
Right.
No,
And
no,
and
no,
that
no,
is
no, no.
and that's pretty much the pairing that I was thinking of, is that you have Storm and Black Panther obviously having history, you know, but you want to, again, because you have this preferred pairing that obviously doesn't work. I mean, even within the X-Men cartoon or storylines, it seemed like Storm was pretty much a rebound because Wolverine actually had more feelings for
Which is even
Jean Grey.
creepier because Jean is still a teenager. So I'm like, ugh. But anyway, so moving on. So then you get to, and even in this, they start to have more like diplomacy. And that's what I really liked about that, because it's like, they're like, because Storm understands the value of diplomacy because she was the leader of the X-Men and stuff. And she's always been like the more diplomatic type. And then she like, honestly, here's the thing, is like with her and Black Panther, it turns into a good version of Game of Thrones. Yes, I did say good version because I hate that show.
You do?
Yes, because here's why, okay? I try to watch it, and here's my critique. Number one, too many damn characters for me to keep up with. Number two, there'll be like an epic battle. Like body parts are flying, sword fights. Hard cut to a hardcore sex scene that belongs on a certain hub.
Oh,
And then I'm like, wait. Where is this coming from? Where was the
yeah,
transition here?
yeah. I mean, that is
Plus,
what.
I always felt the show was a little too graphic on the sex stuff. So I'm like, no. Why would I? At a certain point, it got too gratuitous. I could be a prude because I'm of the opinion that that belongs never in a show, but still.
I mean, it depends on, the the content and the reasoning behind it. But sometimes, yeah, is that they have no reason. It's just they want that in there at
Well,
some
remember, they
point.
also had a brother and sister together, and I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah, the twin sis. That
Yeah,
was
so I'm like,
very.
no. Now, as soon as that happens, I'm like, I'm good. I don't want the FBI to be knocking on my door. Anyway, so, but I like
Jared, if
this.
that's the case,
Yeah,
they will be knocking on millions of people's doors.
I know. But with this, again, what I really like about this is that I like couples that like can integrate together well. And the whole thing about diplomacy with this, because as a political science guy, because that was like my major in school and my master's degree, I've always been kind of a political junkie. I just didn't do a podcast about that because that's divisive as hell and I don't want to get canceled. But anyway, but it's like I like seeing that with like other stuff because because when I noticed because my last summer of my master's degree, I got to do a paper on the politics of comic books. I had the best teacher ever
Which was
because
excellent.
yeah, thank you. Because my teacher was like one of those people where if she saw you had a passion for something, she would 110% like tell you. She sent me a text once saying, Jared, what's kryptonite? And I sent her an entire paragraph explaining what kryptonite was. And she's like, somehow I knew you'd tell me. But so she actually told me, I kind of want you to do a thing on politics because I was always trying to like find like the politics of pop culture. That's always something that's very interested in me. And one of the things I really learned is that I like seeing like you could see like actual like inter-country like relations in these comic books, even with this, because in the later X-Men books, they did a book. They did like I've explained to you the Orgy Island, right?
Yes, unfortunately.
All right, but here's the good part. And
there's a good part.
what I did like is that they had there's this idea in world politics called realism, and what that basically means is that each country will only see you, Robert, have a good one. Each country will only look out for their own interests, and that's essentially what the mutants were doing in their island. They were saying we're only looking out for us and our own from now on because you guys have screwed us repeatedly. And I'll get into more of that as we go on, but there's like a lot of like intersection between these two, and that's the Black Panther and Storm that I see a lot.
Yeah, and I like the conflict of the other thing is that with Clark and Hannah's relationship and Storm and Black Panthers, the conflict is a natural conflict of perspective, and they have the same goals, but at the same time they might separate within how to get to it. But when you kind of dissect it a little bit more, they they are still pretty much on the same path, and they are very much two sides of the same coin. Um, but that different perspective can strain the relationship a little bit. It can, have them clashing, but at the same time, at the end, they learn from each other, and that's something that is a healthy for a relationship. You don't want to just, have them happy-go-lucky agreeing on everything. You have to have a healthy conflict, and um, you know, but with Marvel using their conflict to, have them divorce, it again, you have that you go too far in that contrivance. The same thing with Clark and Diana's relationship because they have a different perspective of identity, and with Clark going overboard with the whole "I'm only human" self-rejecting of his Kryptonian heritage, that's something that honestly you were basically throwing the character under the bus just for them not to be together, and that's more harm than good for not only their dynamic but also the character themselves.
Exactly. So then we get to X-Men Worlds Apart. And by the way, I love that cover on the right by, I think it's Diodato Jr. Diodato was like one of the like premier Marvel artists, and he like drew like a lot of really good stuff. And I like
Hmm.
this because they've done this with Wolverine too, because Wolverine's a member of like 5 different Marvel teams. In fact, he's been on like the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, the X-Men. So they did an issue that's like an average day in Wolverine, and each page is him doing something with a different team.
Oh, that's pretty neat. I have
And
to maybe
plus,
read
when
that.
we get to Avengers versus X-Men, that plays a very important role, which
Hmm.
Avengers versus X-Men is the next slide. But I like this, seeing how she's trying to like juggle her responsibilities with both, because yeah, she's like one of the faces of being a mutant, and she's the queen of a country.
Yeah, it's a lot of responsibility, and it can make or break your relationship, especially if you have the communication and the understanding. And again, that is something that DC and Marvel has a problem with taking away from these couples to drive in that drama. That that's pretty much unnecessary to me.
Exactly. So then, all right, Avengers versus X-Men. All right, so this is story. This is like one of my favorite Marvel storylines. So I know a lot about this, and I have the trade right up here, the hardcover. So, how familiar are you with the Phoenix?
Now I am with watching the X-Men cartoon.
Okay, so the Phoenix is like an energy force essentially that's like I think it represents creation all that stuff, but it's what Jean Grey was like infected with. So
Hmm.
Jean is dead at this point because what people forget is that at a certain point in Grant Morrison's X-Men she died again, and she was dead up until the Krakoa thing in 2019. So she was dead for like a good amount of time. And during this time period is when Scott was with Emma Frost. Hopefully, we'll do that relationship soon because Scott and Emma is my Marvel Super Wonder. But by the way, Britt, just wanted to tell you that right there. So
Yeah,
when you get to Avengers versus X-Men, so the idea was that the Phoenix was returning to Earth. Now, at this time period, have you heard of the storyline House of M?
I have.
Yeah, so that's where, for those that don't know, that's where Scarlet Witch said no more mutants and decimated the mutants. In fact, it's called the decimation, where like there was like a few billion mutants, and then after the decimation, it was like a few hundred. The reason why they did that is because Marvel felt that that too many mutants exist in the Marvel universe, and they too many for them to justify the whole mutants are second class citizens thing. So they were like, we have to cut them down, but not kill them. We have to like depower them. So what happened is we get this character named Hope Summers, and she's like supposed to be, she's supposed to be like the messiah for mutants, and they did a few storylines with her. But so the Phoenix is returning to Earth, and it says, "I'm going to make Hope my new host." Now, the Avengers know what at this point what it means if the Phoenix is returning to Earth. So the president calls Cap and Iron Man and goes, can you deal with this? So Cap and Iron Man show up on the mutant island. It's not Krakoa at this point because at this point the X-Men have kind of broken up. Wolverine and Cyclops had a falling out. Wolverine took half the students and went to New York and like formed like the Jean Grey School for gifted youngsters. And Cyclops took his crew and they went to Los Angeles to an island called Utopia that they founded with Magneto. So Magneto's a good guy at this point. And so the Avengers show up in Utopia, Wolverine in tow, because Wolverine is an Avenger at this point. So he's basically fighting his own people. But what Cap basically tells Cyclops is, hey, listen, dude, we're just going to take Hope into custody because the Phoenix is coming and we're just going to protect her. That's it. And then Cyclops goes, no, I don't trust humans. And then Captain America basically says, but you can trust me, right? And then Cyclops is like, okay, you're this influential superhero, right? Cap goes, yes. Scott goes, how come you never used your position as like a voice people listen to tell the people, hey, mutants are cool. They're not they're not all this big threat. How come you've never done anything for the mutants to like improve public relations? Cap does not have an answer to that. That's my favorite moment in the book because I've always wondered this. I'm like, why didn't any of these Avengers that people listen to do a press conference and say, hey, get off the mutants' backs? A lot of these people are just good people. Anyway, the Avengers.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
if you were to have the Avengers, or actually do that, first of all, that is very a meta type
I
moment
know.
there uh, for the writer. And second, if you were to have that, it it would kind of like there's no point in the conflict of, humans um not trusting the mutants. So I'm guessing that that is
Here's the
why it's
thing,
never
Britt.
addressed.
Here's the thing, Britt. There kind of is no point because here's the problem. Here's the problem with the X-Men existing in the Marvel universe. So people hate the mutants because they have all these dangerous powers, but hold up Thor as a hero.
That's true. It
I'm
is.
like,
It's
wait a minute
very.
here. It kind of does. When arguably the Avengers have like as much power as the X-Men, some of them. But anyway, going on with the story. So Iron Man builds a suit of armor, as he normally does, that he thinks has the energy to destroy the Phoenix. So it's basically a delaying tactic. So the X-Men and the Avengers are basically in a war right now. So Iron Man shoots the Phoenix with his cannon, and it doesn't destroy it. What it does, it splits it up, and the Phoenix inhabits the bodies of Scott Summers, Emma Frost, Magic, Colossus, and Namor. They're called the Phoenix Five. And basically, Iron Man's like, I've made an enormous mistake because you basically supercharged the X-Men and gave them basically god powers. And he's like, oh no. So the Avengers are in hiding. At this point, the mutant, I say mutant because at this point they were doing the MCU and they didn't want to acknowledge that like Scarlet Witch was a mutant because they would have to give royalties to Fox. So mutant, they were trying to hunt down Scarlet Witch because of what happened with House of M. So they turned Emma Frost into some seductress, which you could put that in there. It was the Phoenix like influencing her a behavior, and same thing happened to Scott. So that's why it's like relatively believable. So she goes to Namor and goes, okay, I know where Scarlet Witch is. They're holding her in Wakanda. So that's where the first image comes in. Namor floods Wakanda. Literally, and kills millions. This is what that scene from Black Panther 2 is homaging when all of a sudden Wakanda has like a big tidal wave go through it. That's that. And it kills
Oh,
hundreds of Wakandans. So the war progresses, and then you basically so the way it works that when you knock out one of the Phoenix Five, their Phoenix power leaves them and gets redistributed among the other ones. So eventually it's just Scott and he becomes the Phoenix. Then he kills Professor X. Yeah, Professor X dies.
it's a lot
And
of drama going on.
it's the X-Men. So then he's defeated. Then you get this scene in Wakanda. So at a certain point, a bunch of the X-Men turned against Cyclops because they're like, this is going a little far, man. I mean, we're fighting the Avengers who are our friends. Namor just flooded a foreign country. What are we doing here? So it's like Rogue, I think the young X-Men, and then Storm leave the Avengers and leave the X-Men and fight alongside the Avengers. And then the Avengers basically win because of this. So then you get, and this is the breakup. So Storm shows up to like help T'Challa, and then Black Panther basically says, so Storm basically says, they're my people to T'Challa. I want to help them rebuild the same as you. So Black Panther says, they're not your people anymore since the attack. All X-Men have been officially branded enemies of Wakanda. And then Storm goes, I would have fought beside you if I had known this was happening. I've only stayed with the X-Men to try and stop something like this from ever happening again. And then what happened was, okay, so Black Panther goes, our marriage was annulled by the high priest of the Panther clan. You are not my wife anymore. Okay. And then Storm goes, wait, but you're the high priest of the Panther clan. And then he goes, yeah. So
I get
this is the breakup part.
I get that he's, angry, that he was written, as angry and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the contrived drama of going too far. I mean, that to know that he pretty much blames her for what happened. And it's kind of like, again, they are the responsibilities and the duties that they have. That breakup, what you just described, pretty much is along the lines of how Steve broke up with Diana
Hmm.
because she, has to be Wonder Woman. There are certain things that she has to do, and again, that misunderstanding there, it does um, break up a relationship, but it still doesn't make sense to me of how he just is totally angry at her for um Namor and whatever Cyclops was, going what was going on with them. It
Yeah. Hmm.
it just seems like again you have these sort of storylines, and it's kind of like even Action Comics 600, you know, how Clark and Diana, yeah, they were young and everything, and you have this bait and switch where it seems like this couple is building, and then you have um Darkseid come and wreck their first date, and it becomes awkward. So it's pretty much this where you have a conflict of opposing sides that should be actually working together to wreck this marriage, and then you go overboard and annul it. And it feels very much like an editorial push. It doesn't seem natural to the actual story.
Exactly. I'm trying to find who wrote that issue because if it's he who must not be named, oh god, he's too because he was involved in this event. So I'm like, oh no. Anyway,
Yeah,
the amount of damage that guy has done to couples is astounding. So then we get to the regular, so the later Black Panther run by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Again, the only good thing he ever did at Marvel, because when he wrote Captain America, he butchered him. Butchered. Anyway, so Storm still now this is what I like. Storm still, despite everything, Storm still supported her people and T'Challa. There you go, right there. It's kind of like despite everything. See, and this is the thing that I like with that is that they still support each other. Is that even in times of like trouble, they still support each other. It's like this was one of the good parts of the Tomasi Superman Wonder Woman run is when after Clark says, "I don't know if I love you anymore." Um, Diana, they're gonna go like I think break out Parasite, and then Diana goes, "Despite what's happening between you and me, we have a job to do."
yeah, even that too. It it's very much editorial driven, and that's the thing with these couples when you break them up, when they are given these negative light, negative perspectives for other fans. When you have a writer or editorial that wants them to break up or wants them to have this drama, and yeah, we want to be optimistic or something like that to say, well, there was a good part that even though they broke up or something, they're still supporting each other. But it seemed like if you're going to support each other and still have that sort of in sync, you know, in syncness of,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, connecting them, then why break them up in the first place? It's things like that that's kind of like, okay, you're doing too much. Yeah, you can have the drama, but a breakup and everything else is unnecessary.
Exactly. So then you get to X-Men Gold. Now here's the thing. Okay, X. I think there was an X-Men Gold series that launched. 2018 was like the worst year for Marvel because you know what happened. All right, X-Men Gold. I'm fairly certain this is X-Men Gold. So one of the writers hid anti-Semitic messages in the art.
Oh, Jesus. Like,
Yeah,
why would you do that?
I know, and Marvel caught it and fired him, obviously. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it was X-Men Gold, and so and what I like about this that it just seems like throughout all these different series is that Storm and Black Panther are just continually teaming up despite everything that's going on with them. So I do really like that. That's really cool.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty neat. But again, if you have them teaming up and everything, if you have them, knowing how naturally they work together, why break them up?
Well, we asked that about Superman and Wonder Woman, and we all know the answer to that, didn't we? So,
Yes.
so then, so they even have alternate continuities. What if they didn't break up? Wow, this is Super Wonder of Marvel.
Yeah, pretty much. Especially with knowing that, first of all, they have children. And second, it's that dangling carrot, teasing of the relationship, knowing that it works, knowing that it's, you know, uh, even a success. And, but again, why mess up the foundational relationship in main continuity if you're going to keep teasing it this way? Just like Clark and Diana's relationship. Yes, again, they are under DC's, that complete umbrella, but and so they have to be separate franchises, but that still doesn't take away that, yeah, you do have the alternative, or you can like have them at least their friendship though, and that's pretty much the foundation of who they are, as the dynamic that they have. Even the Trinity, the Trinity, you want to gimmick it, or well, you want to market it, and but it's a gimmick. um and DC is pushing far more the world's finest, and Diana is pretty much off by herself. You don't really feel the Trinity, only if they do have like how they had absolute power with them being on comic covers or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah, you did have World Finest 30, and it was supposed to be the first time the Trinity met. And although we did have those moments with Clark and Diana, and you feel that familiar vibe of them being close, it still felt like, this is very much a one and done. But the next arcs, or the next arc of World's Finest, Diana is nowhere to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
And she's supposed to be part of the Justice League, and she's not there. She's not in any of the Superman books as of now, but you have Batman appearing in the Superman books. You only have her, you have Batman and Superman in her books, of course, and with what Tom King is doing, because he doesn't really want to write Wonder Woman, he wants to write the Super Sons, Superman, and Batman. But, you know, you want us to believe in this friendship, but yet you aren't giving it equal um, respect within the books. And so that was what I was saying earlier, was that, yeah, they might have, they are still under the same editor group, and they do have an individual editor, but it's also still all within the same circle that
Mm-hmm.
connects. And it's more so on the Wonder Woman side that respects Clark and Diana's relationship
Mm-hmm.
than the Superman side. And of course, because of being the status quo of being married, even the women like Lana Lang, Cat Grant, Lori, uh, and any other past love interest or so, Maxima, that are within the Superman mythos, those women are disrespected for Lois. You know, so with Marvel, they the one thing that they don't have is a love triangle. It doesn't seem, for Black Panther and Storm. It's just their conflict together, but it's still that contrivance though that I don't really appreciate. Of if the relationship is natural, yes, they are separate because Black Panther is within the Avengers and his solo. Storm is her solo and pretty much within the X-Men mostly, but now she's, even though she's now an Avenger, I believe, it's still the fact of, with coming together and creating new stories, you are limiting the stories and dismantling everything when you create this drama to separate the characters.
Exactly. By the way, so Britt, have you ever seen the animated movie called Next Avengers Heroes of Tomorrow?
Yes, and they have a
Yep.
son.
I was about to bring
Yes.
that up. Yeah, there you go. And that's actually in continuity with those Ultimate Avengers movies they made a while back.
Really?
Yeah, so it's Ultimate Avengers, Ultimate Avengers 2, which introduces Black Panther, and then 3 is the kid with Storm.
Well, that's neat. I did see that they have, well, um, I don't know if it's been kind of confirmed. It was on a CBR a write up about their children, and it
Mhm.
was one. Um, she's Storm's daughter, but
Mhm.
she's it's hinted that she has kind of like animalistic powers that similar to Black Panther. So I guess that she might be his daughter too, but they never. I guess they never really confirmed it within the storyline. But she's a time traveler,
Mhm.
so this is the one thing that I kind of forgot. But that would be also a cool crossover within our hypothetical crossovers of Storm and Black Panther's time travel daughter with Clark and Diana's with Hyperman, their
Ah,
son,
there you go.
Jonathan, because is he's protecting Hypertime.
I like that. So then we get to this is the thing. So a lot of with this we get balancing of responsibilities. By the way, actually, before I move on, then the recent Avengers book, actually, like the one for last month, actually made this comment. So Storm joins the Avengers. Now, Black Panther takes on a mission, and then Thor goes, "Are you doing that?" Actually, I think it's actually Cap. Cap goes, are you doing this just because your ex-wife is on the team?" And then Black Panther basically says, "Oh yeah, I was that obvious, huh?" And he goes, "See," yeah, and then Black Panther goes, "Here's the thing: I've never feared anything short of losing, and losing Aurora Monroe was the biggest mistake of my life."
Aw,
Yeah, there
see,
you go.
it's so. But honestly, it,
Oh, real quick,
whoever
the bottom right image I found where he goes, "In this moment, you lift my sadness with just your presence," and they kiss.
that is so sweet. See, whoever wrote this, you can really tell, which writers respect relationships,
Mhm.
regardless of them, whether they are just friends or hinting of a romance or full blown romance. There are some writers who actually have respect, either way. And that is something that both Marvel and DC is missing. Is writers with respect and that's more open minded for different relationships and for, different storylines and able to let these characters just naturally flow. When you are stuck with settling, like how even DC is doing with Dawn of DC, or well, is it Dawn of DC
No,
still?
it's all in now.
All in, whatever. They the same
There's so
thing.
many there's so many initiatives. Don't worry.
With All In, it just feels like honestly, it feels like the same thing. It's especially with Wonder Woman still stuck with the sovereign story, and in trying to push
Particularly
Trinity.
when they advertise it as all the books are getting new arcs. Dot dot dot. Except for these.
Yeah, and then you have where, you know, even with absolute power and how these characters are now with whacked up powers, like everyone has someone else's powers and stuff like that. I mean, it really feels like, you know, sugar on a
That's
lot
the
of
fun part
sugar.
about doing a PG podcast is finding ways to curse without cursing.
Yeah, it's a lot of sugar going on the iced tea,
Mhm.
and it it just feels so kind of like stagnant. And there's, yeah, you have creators and everything that's hyping things up. That's what they're supposed to do, is PR and everything like that. And they want, to keep comics going, so they hype it up. Scott Snyder is definitely DC's hype man for these books. Um,
They need someone to do it. Dan DiDio used to be that dude.
yeah, and but at the same time, you see that not all these books got like the boost that they needed, um, for with the whole new all in stuff. And even if they do have like new these relaunches or launches, it's still barely making the top 50. Or even if it is, kind of like how they celebrate way too much on first issues, it's kind of like, yeah, it's nice that the first issue um, tops the chart, but at the same time, look at how many variant covers that it got. And if it has like over 30 plus variant covers for the first issue, yeah, you're basically inflating the chart. And
Yeah,
then
exactly.
you
That's
have
why
to,
variant coverage is kind of a scam.
yeah, and so you have to look at the drop off of the second issue, and basically just give it the first six issues to see, then you can be able to celebrate if the book stays um, at least above 50.
Yeah, exactly. So then we'll continue on here. They also maintain a deep respect and affection to each other, which again, that's what I really like about this is like, again, despite everything that happened in the past, for one thing, he's always still respect her because I think deep down T'Challa knows and trusts Storm and knows why she did what she did during the war against the against the X-Men. So he's like, I know your heart was in the right place. I know it wasn't from a position of evil, so I can't exactly hate you.
Exactly. And that's pretty much the same thing with Clark and Diana's relationship. And it's kind of like, even though it's awkward at some points, it's still that they have that connection. Now, Marvel is doing a much better job, it seems, with displaying that for Storm and T'Challa. Even if, again, they aren't completely together, they still have that respect, and you still have that hint of, um, past romance, or that maybe we could give it a try in the future or something like that. With Clark and Diana, it's just completely just kind of like how we feel. It's a gamble, you know, um, or it pretty much just pops up out of nowhere, from the Crisis movie, how we were anticipating, oh, well, pretty much me at some point. I'm like, I don't trust this until I actually see it through.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so with the Crisis movie, it was it was all right for what it was. And
Oh, you should see when Taladia leaked to me that like Superman and Wonder Woman kissed. You should have seen how many times Britt said, "I don't believe it."
exactly, I had to first of all, I had to have multiple confirmations. Second, and then I had to actually see it for myself. And then it was kind of like, oh, okay, because again, how DC has done so with the previous animated movies, the first half they were building Clark and Diana's relationship. The second half was just abysmal. You had Diana being a mouthpiece. You had her fall into the background. You had this contrived story of Doomsday yet again, and Superman getting kidneyed for no reason at all. You know, so it's things like that that's have you very uh, gives precaution of things. And even with Immortal Wonder Woman, didn't really expect that to have that moment there of,
Or Wonder Woman 800.
yes, Wonder Woman 800 was definitely a surprise. We also have uh I would say Wonder Woman Evolution. That book was pretty much um, very underrated, and it was forgotten, I guess, because the story itself, it it would have worked. I think if the art was a little bit better, and it kind of the storyline wasn't dragging too much. But the
Hmm.
fact that Diana's main like conscience and who she really trusted was Clark throughout the story. And he pretty much was the one that gave her this sort of um strength in a sense, for them to be friends, and I guess her inspiration to keep going. That sort of thing worked. And the writer, I think Stephanie Phillips, she was a New 52 fan. So I don't know if she was necessarily a fan completely of the relationship as romantic. However, she did respect their relationship, just the dynamic as a whole. Um, and then you have even Wonder Woman, Black and Gold, some stories like that. Those one-off stories we have, but it, it would be nice to have something a little bit more solid. And it feels like Marvel is okay with giving, something a little bit more solid for couples that have a little bit of controversy, within them.
To a degree. And
Yeah.
but by the way, Britt, do these two images look familiar? I
Yes.
was going to use them anyway, but okay, so here's what happened, guys. So I normally run my thumbnails by Britt before I start making all the streams, and the funny part is I send her this one, the one for this stream. And then I literally get a DM like, "Oh my gosh, I was going to tell you to use these exact images for the thumbnail."
Yes, because I mean, it of course the hand placement is a little bit different, but it's mostly the same. And it's kind of like the first of all, you have this sort of feeling of strength, and you have this feeling of it's leaning more of respect and sexiness. So, you really give um that grand feel of the parents. With their similarities, again, we've gone through that their impact of culture and how they do have this deep understanding of each other, and they have these feelings, whether it is just friends or they have this romantic relationship that you know they still work in sync, and it's a natural pairing. I don't know if you I didn't see it, but also a similar panel was when Black Panther and Storm were getting married. They had a kind of a public announcement of it.
Oh, I did have that. It's right there.
Okay, yeah, so I didn't know that Marvel was able to use like the actual BET.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
I
I
didn't.
noticed that when I went through the image. I'm like, oh wow.
That is like an actual. I didn't. DC mostly kind of they like or even how movies you can tell what they're referencing, but they change the name to something weird. Like I've seen like the off-brand, Dr. Pepper, and it's called Dr. Thunder or something. Things like that. So for them to have the actual BT logo from that time too is very interesting. But yeah, how public the relationship was for Storm and Black Panther, and the public relationship of Clark and Diana, and that pressure too that they have to go through. And again, that creates conflict because they I would say that Clark seems more like, between all four, the more reserved one. T'Challa a little bit because he's trying to protect Wakanda, but they are pretty much all open. Um, as far as, I mean, Storm, Diana, and T'Challa. they are open with their identities and kind of being within themselves. And Clark is the one that kind of needs that push to be on that level. You also have the similarities of how T'Challa and Diana, they want to preserve, their homes as Wakanda and Themyscira. That, and really when seeing the Black Panther, especially the first movie, and how you see Wakanda, the technology, and but yet you have that natural look of, you know, I would say of the fantastical feel of it. And that's kind of like that's what we was kind of missing with the mascara. I would say that 1984 aesthetically tried to give it that fantastical look, but yeah, it pales in comparison to what we had for MCU Wakanda.
Exactly. So then, yeah. So the similarities with Super Wonder is that obviously, well, they're both insane. They're both powerful superheroes, superhero couples. In terms of power, I would argue in terms of Black Panther and Storm, she is objectively more powerful. But
Powerful
I mean, he's more into the. I mean, yeah,
technology bits.
yeah, but he kind of is still a little bit of a super soldier, so there is that. But compared to Clark and Diana, by the way, did you know that in DC versus Marvel they had Diana and Storm fight?
Yes,
And that was the one where I'm like, I call BS because Storm just shocks Diana a bunch of times. And you know why? Because the fans voted, and this was during a time period where the X-Men were like really big. So I
popular. Yeah,
get that, but I'm like, Storm is still a person, but Diana's a goddess. I mean, I know Storm is technically also a goddess, but Diana is like almost as invulnerable as Superman.
I would say that it honestly it depends on Diana's power level at that time, how it fluctuates, because that
Mm-hmm.
that is a problem. Like it's already that they voted for who would win, but also in comparison, Diana's power level, how DC themselves continue to fluctuate with it of what whether she's bulletproof or whether yeah, now probably getting shocked she will, be unconscious, except for the fact that she can control lightning like a couple of years back she could. So it's really just a wishy-washy type thing. Um Also with the with bringing up technology base, you know, um I would say that Themyscira was supposed to be more sci-fi, but also the connection is how Krypton was very much in a scientific way, and how Wakanda is too. That sort of advanced technology could come together. And
Speaking of
you have
technology, I have an Amazon's attack reference for you.
no, oh my
So when they're fighting the Amazons, someone tells the president, "Don't worry, sir. The Amazons don't have access to technology."
I oh my goodness.
I love how I can lord that over you in terms of the Amazon's attack, but yeah, that storyline sucks.
Yes, it does. Um, gosh, you even though they have this the also the similarities is that yeah, um T'Challa is more of the sci-fi type, with Clark being more of the sci-fi type, and then you have Storm and Diana more of the natural goddesses, the and being more of ingrained, within nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then the difference is that, well, is that, well, Superman and Wonder Woman's relationship was like in different continuities. Well, Black Panther Storm was a little bit more in like just the main universe, but I do like how both of these couples have been screwed over by BS editorial.
Yeah.
That's the real similarity that we want to talk about.
Honestly, yeah. If you want to talk similarities, that is the main thing. Is that these two pairings is very much where they have this positive showing of whether it is black powerful black excellence or of these two outsiders, foreigners, being the protectors of the world, of the outside world that doesn't necessarily trust them or even want them really. But yet you have critics, of fans that don't see that. They just see two powerful people together with Clark and Diana, and they just think that they're gods, and that's it. And then you have with Storm and Black Panther, it's just, oh, they're black, so that's why they're together. And
Hmm.
the reductiveness of that is just, again, you are taking away the storytelling, and you are really just disrespecting the dynamic that's obviously built and shown, whether it is a writer who basically wants to um, dash gasoline on all of that and burn it, is still there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And luckily, Peter J. Tomasi has not written Black Panther and Storm, so we're safe in there. So, watch. He'll announce, I'm going to Marvel. And I'm like, oh no.
No, right. Also, you have the differences of Storm and Black Panther. They are more within the African culture, like they, emphasize on that. Clark and Diana, of course, they are more the Western American culture, and and with that conflict that goes with that. I would say that they still have that sort of cultural conflict of, you know, uh, just pretty much the criticism, and the perspective of just everyday people, whether within the comics or the fans.
Yeah, exactly. So then we get to the perception of the relationship. Again, like we've said, fans have like a lot of the fans are very superficial. Have you noticed that? We're like, oh,
Yes.
I know you noticed that. We're like, they're like, oh, Superman and Wonder Woman are just together because they're the most like powerful beings, and I'm like, um, or Black Panther and Storm are just together because of their skin color, and I'm like, that may have been the original intention, but that ain't it. That ain't it anymore.
Right. I mean, and they, again, I don't think that that was ever the intention. It's always, and again, when you read even Marvel's write-ups of Storm and Black Panther and why they are together, none of that says that, oh, they're black, so we should put them together. Um, it's always something positive of just these natural people within themselves, within at the time how they met, and just how they're written within their feelings for that time, and then again with their natural sync, uh, being in sync of their goals and what they represent. And it's the same thing with Clark and Diana. Never in any write up that they have, oh, they are gods. Now, DC has pretty much said that they are perceived as such, that they have powers like gods, but it's never that they are gods. And that's the thing that fans, of course, they are going to ignore the details, but they have to not do that anymore. You have to actually read the books or the encyclopedias, whatever DC and Marvel presents as the facts of the relationships. You know, sometimes DC can be a little bit, DC and Marvel can be biased towards, kind of like how they do the anniversary write-ups, and they
Hmm.
say it's been 85 years just of this pairing, and it's kind of like, wait a minute,
Yeah,
no.
I'm like there was a good like 5 years where it was Clark and Diana.
Or even, or just even within those 5 years, or even more, just the in-betweens of, they haven't always been together, they haven't
Hmm.
always been married. Clark and Lois wasn't married in 1938. They weren't. Um,
In fact, she hated Clark.
yeah, but they want to make it seem like they've just been in love this whole entire time. No, if you're going to talk about the history, and that's something that even us within this show want to lay across, is that what we are presenting, yeah, we are talking about Clark and Diana's relationship, but we also talk about the ugly parts of it. We don't sugarcoat the the issues that the couple has. We want to address that as well and show that, but also show, of course, the good too. But it just feels like you're being very manipulative in a sense when you just show part of the pairing. You have to, I feel like you have to still show that quote unquote bad part of the pairing as well.
Yeah.
And that goes within the criticisms and the double standards that writers and fans both set set for the pairings. So overall, with um, both of these pairings, it really feels like, yet again, the issues that they have is based on just fan perception and how, again, superficial they are, instead of looking deeply within the history of these pairings.
Now, as you guys know, whenever we do a couple comparison, Britt and I always do what would happen if this couple crossed over with Super Wonder. So Britt apparently prepared an elaborate story. So Britt, let's hear it.
All right, so both of these pairings are about, confronting um, the culture and the government, also, politically wise. So it's not so much as punching, it's more so like how they confront, like I said, in a cultural sense, and the impact that they have, in how they are perceived by the public and everything like that. So the idea that I have is inspired by absolute power, which is because you have these two pairings about culture and how, and politically, what's going on of suppressing people of of another world and stuff. So they're going against the government. And yes, we are also kind of rewriting the Wonder Woman story too. But sovereign,
You mean you don't want Wonder Woman to be inappropriately making out with Steve Trevor during a prison break?
right? Or or the fact that she just gave up in the middle of a battle because he got kennied, and then she created a baby out of nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You know what's kind of interesting in the pages? Diana's face is in shadow, which makes me think Cersei. But anyway, more on that later. But so tell me about this crossover.
Okay, so the synopsis, in a world where the boundaries between universes blur, Superman and Wonder Woman, of the DC universe, they are transported to Wakanda in the Marvel universe, and the crossover explores cultural and political themes, leadership, heritage, and unity. So again, with all the differences and the similarities that they have, with the conflicts that they have, the history that they have, we are putting this all in one story and addressing it our way, as we usually do, of of Superman confronting of how he has this certain, um, he's not fully accepting himself, so he has to learn from not only Diana, but he sees T'Challa and Storm as well, um, how they are able to confront their identities as well. You also have politically, where again they are judged, by the public or the government the government going after them, and then I think politically, it's just that although sometimes comics they don't want to go into politics, it comics have always been political. It's just a fine line of what you want to explore and how it
Well,
can positively impact.
Well, yeah, it's true. It also comes down to yes, comics have always been political, but it's never been as opposed to now, it's never been the writers saying, if you disagree with me in any way, then screw you.
Exactly. It's not anything like that. It's just more so of, like I said, the positive impact of how it's things that if your belief is problematic, no, we don't want to endorse that. That's what we want to kind of put out
Mhm.
there. But if it is a belief, especially a cultural belief and and you know, like I said, these two couples represent different ethnicities, races. Uh, they can even sexual orientation, things like that. It is about acceptance and also not only acceptance within another person and just overall, but also within yourself. So that is something that really I feel that not even just the story that we kind of come up with, but also just in general that DC and Marvel needs to show more of. And I think X-Men 97 did this very well, with the um X-Men going with the government and things like that, and
Mhm.
how it was politically charged in a way of showing you pretty much this is how you deal with those certain topics. You don't have to go either way. You're not trying to force your political beliefs. It's just that we're showing both sides of it.
Yeah. And they kind of did this with Green Lantern, Green Arrow in certain ways. But tell us about the plot of this crossover.
Okay, so there's a cosmic event which creates a rift of the DC and Marvel universes that the rift is pretty much bridging these worlds together, and it's like no, they have to be separated. They meet uh Storm and Black Panther. At first, they feel like they are the enemies attacking, but because of course Diana and Clark being more of peacemakers in a sense, that they are able to talk down an attack um from T'Challa. And I think T'Challa and Clark will kind of clash just a little bit, especially with the new 52 Clark. Um, so it's very much Diana and Storm being the more level heads of the relationships. So they work together and they share their cultural backgrounds. So they become very much interested in knowing, who they are. And especially with knowing that this Wakanda and how Diana is very much ingrained in understanding different cultures. She, loves it and she honors it and embraces it. So of course she will have lots of um questions, especially in the natural sense of Wakanda. And then that will pretty much intrigue Clark to embrace that he is the son of a scientist. And I keep wanting to enforce that because even with Mark Waid right now, he's doing the Action Comics storyline, and it's honestly very boring. But he's having Clark time travel back to Krypton before it go booms, and he meets Jarrell and Laura. And what I don't like is that Laura is now just kind of like the wife, instead of the equal scientist or general
Mhm.
of the Kryptonian army. She's just, there, and carrying, baby. Cal, which I mean, it's okay, but at the same time, we want to see how smart and stuff she is as well, instead of just being Jor-El's wife, and he's the smart one and the leader. I
Hmm.
don't really like that as, they supposed to be, even if they are deceased, I feel like Clark is supposed to have both parents ideally as shown as equals in some way.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, so in turn, Clark and Diana tells Storm and Black Panther about their heritage, which is Kryptonian heritage and the Amazons. And of course, Storm is very much intrigued with Diana. And they become pretty much besties within the time of this um, story. And like I said, they uh, really
You know
bond
what this
over this.
is? Remember that issue of Superman and Wonder Woman when Clark and Diana are having dinner with Arthur and Mira, and then Arthur and Clark start talking about battle?
Exactly. Except for here, of course, they are more so talking about Black Panther and Clark are talking about more scientific things.
Yeah.
But yes, this is definitely yeah, this can be that can be inspiration too. And then after that they face the threat of what's causing the rift, and also the of course the villains, the that are kind of exploiting this, and they are using this in a way to, of course, put the blame on the metahumans, the mutants, and stuff like that. They are they have been waiting for this, some type of weird world, kind of like uh world destroying thing, and they feel like the world is basically destroying itself because the civilians are accepting what they don't like. So, as of absolute power of how Waller um, wanted to take away the powers and stuff like that. So she feels like this is the time to do it. And also with the perception of the ordinary people, that they want them to turn against the metahumans as well. So within that time, Clark, Diana, Storm, and T'Challa, they have to also um, be more open to the people. And that is an inspiration from Heroes in Crisis, because um, Clark, he is kind of like the PR guy of the Justice League that will do the press conferences. But you have Diana that speaks to the UN. Storm, we saw that in her the first issue of her new book that she was speaking to, and then T'Challa, of course, he's going to speak on behalf of Wakanda. So they're all very much public speakers, and so you pretty much use that as a plot point as well. Then you have the political tensions of basically how a war gets started. And not so much as the goddess of war, but at this point, how Charles Soule described it is that Diana, she wants to understand war to prevent it. So she is using her knowledge to, you know, keep things at bay. So there wouldn't be a war started. Um,
By the way, so I just realized, what's another similarity between the particularly Wonder Woman and Black Panther that we didn't mention? They both come from societies that were hidden from the world.
yes, I kind of said that earlier, but yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah, that it, and especially because of the advanced kind of like, you want to preserve that um the purity, because yeah, man's world, especially how you have the American way, and at that time that seems so like the positive go-to thing as a way of life. But the more like the way the world is now, how the American way, how it's defined, is totally different from how it first was. So within that, you understand, and that's why you want to preserve your own identity, because with the American way and how DC especially presented it with Superman, it's more so like you have to be a regular American, born and raised. And pretty much what Barn or Byrne tried to enforce as well. And you end up um, pretty much with the self hatred that Superman kind of presents, 50% of the time in post crisis, and how Krypton is neglected and disrespected and also demonized. You know, I don't like how like I said, Mark Wade, he's trying to have this story, but it's so boring. It just feels like he's trying to, uh, I don't know what he's trying to do with that story.
A
Have you
lot of
read
people
it?
don't. I have. It's like I don't know what the point of it is yet, but like Clark is somehow transported from the Phantom Zone to Krypton moments before it blows up.
Yeah, and it just feels like, I don't know. I don't know, but it's something that is missing. You know, in the New 52, I guess again because Laura was pretty much within the action of it all, and she was like taking charge. This
Hmm.
Laura, she's very much waiting for Jor-El for what he's going to do, and I
Hmm.
don't really like that. So I feel like
Hmm.
that's what's taken away from the story. Um, but even still, it feels like, again, you are downplaying the Kryptonian like culture and how it is supposed to be something of richness, but the the why it was destroyed is because yes, the higher ups, they did get a little, they were selfish, but the people weren't selfish. They still had their own happiness in a sense. Um, and while Clark was, or Cal was, the first natural born in years, it's still the fact of they still have their own type of culture, and it wasn't a bad thing. They weren't this desolate planet that DC is so bent on making it be. So, going back to the story, it pretty much also tests and challenges their relationships and again, pretty much emphasize how they deal with um, their own perspective within what's going on, and how they help the people to feel not feel frightened that the world is ending, of course. And you see a little bit more of T'Challa taking the lead. You see Storm taking the lead. You see Clark taking the lead, and Diana taking the lead, but they're not taking the lead from each other. They are all just working equally together as a pairing, as individual characters, and then as a group. And all their strengths are coming together. So you have Clark's resilience to be he's kind of like I said, he's more of the protector for the people. And of course we're going to emphasize on the champion of the oppressed. Diana, she's the one with the wisdom, again, with dealing with how to um, understanding war to prevent it. Then you have Storm, her connection to nature, where she's just keeping everything at bay for animals, for the people. And then you have Black Panther. He's more so of the strategist within this story. To if there is a need of war, he can get get the people ready for it.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us, okay, so for the takeaways, what do we get from the takeaways?
So here again, Clark, with seeing not only Diana, but also Storm and Black Panther, how they are very much ingrained within themselves. They are connected with who they are. So he learns to appreciate more so of his own culture and how he is as a leader. Diana, she is more so pushing for she feels inspired as an ambassador to really put forth of how um, the man's world within DC universe, how they need to emphasize more on bringing peace and bringing cultures together. And then Storm and Black Panther, they're they're pretty much it goes from how T'Challa was back and forth within the first Black Panther movie, how he didn't know, you know, if it if he could trust having Wakanda more open to the outside world, which also falls in line with even Diana, how Diana has helped Themyscira be more open to the outside world. So they
Mhm.
all learn from each other. And yeah, and I just feel like all of that that connects quite nicely.
And then we get to the villains, and the first, hey, what's up, Josh? And yes, happy Saturday evening, brother. So then we get the villains, Amanda Waller. It
Okay.
seems even in an Elseworld story, I can't ever escape from this woman.
So with Amanda Waller, we are going to make her better. We know who she is. Of she's not the must mustache twirling villain that Absolute Power tried to make her seem to be, where she really didn't have a motivation but to just be mean or something. I don't know, or
Mhm.
xenophobic. But she really I would say that she is still that way, but at the same time, you kind of feel that she is it's more so the influence of the whatever's causing the rift. And honestly, I was thinking of the within the Marvelverse, the unknown or whatever that is,
Mhm.
uh that might be like the unknown entity that is causing the rift.
Mhm.
So pretty much, Amanda Waller, because of uh, her motivation is control of the government, and honestly, she's the one that wants to be president, and stuff like that, and pretty much the way Waller wants. I see her as wanting this respect as a woman and as a woman with power, but she's corrupted power. So she sees like Storm and Diana. She see these women with power and how people respect them, you know, and that's what she wants. So
Mm.
with giving her a little bit more depth of she wants that power of respect, but she's getting it in a corrupted kind of way. So that's giving her a little bit more depth than just the villain.
I appreciate that. So then we get Henry Peter Gyrick, which this is one where when I saw this, I was like, oh man, Britt really did her research.
Oh my God. So I had to kind of like let me look up like Marvel villains because I have no idea what this was. And I did see like the Shield, a
Hmm.
couple of clips there. And I just looking up, kind of like governmental associated characters within Marvel and DC. So he came up and I was kind of like, okay, cool. So with looking up who he was, I was like, yeah, this is definitely he would be I think that within the government, and you know how politics are, that they feel like they're working together, but at the same time, they're kind of like waiting to backstab each other. So with most of these villains, they are associated with the government, but and they are kind of like within the same group. but one or the other is going to backstab each other. And I feel like um, Henry would try to backstab Waller, and Waller would end up like backstabbing him. So that clash, they will also have a clash.
Yeah, exactly. So then, and he also, by the way, has dealt with the X-Men and the mutants a lot in Marvel Comics. So it actually worked really well.
Yeah. And the fact that, like I said, both of them have the same goal. They just want to reach it, above one another. So with him wanting to restrict, you know, the mutants and others, that is the same thing that Waller wants. But again, she wants that respect, though, even from her fellow villainous or the male villains.
Then you get one of the obvious ones, Lex Luthor.
Yes, within this, Lex Luthor has been or is the president. So it is very much a conflict, especially for Clark. And you also get that when he was when Clark was sort of conflicted of how it feels like Lex is one upping him because Lex keeps, you know, persuading the people. And it's something that Clark needs to do is he needs to get the people to understand that Lex is not for you, and we as Superman, Wonder Woman, and the Justice League, we are for you. We are the ones that are trying to protect you from, and this also goes within the Shelterverse because, you know, in the whole argument of Max Maxwell Lord, even though he is a human, he was still very much a monster, but they would criticize Diana for killing him because they only by appearance see a human man. But then they would be okay with her killing Medusa because they see her as a monster. So you have to also emphasize and show that even though they are humans, they can be just as monstrous and evil, even more so than an actual monster.
Exactly. So then we get to the one where as soon as I saw this choice, I was like, oh, hell yes. Norman Osborn, the Iron Patriot.
Okay, so I don't really know much about this, but again, we're just going within the
He's Marvel's version of Lex at this point, by the way.
okay. Oh, so it all makes sense. So with him again, the whole governmental characters and just that it seemed for him like it says he more so just wants the power and the glory.
Yes.
Well, now it makes sense like Lex.
Well, plus also this guy right here, the Sentry, it's essentially one of Marvel's Superman analogs, and he manipulated the Sentry into doing his bidding. So you can even have it where he goes to Lex and goes, "I know a thing or two about manipulating gods."
Okay, so it all goes together just
Because so what he
perfectly.
did was, so particularly this version of Norman, so Marvel did this storyline called Secret Invasion, which is when the Skrulls, which are shape-shifting aliens, invaded, and they like had sleeper agents disguised as different superheroes throughout the
Hmm.
world. So there was this battle. Norman Osborn positioned himself to take the kill shot on the Skrull leader and present himself as a hero. And he said, and so basically he took over the government, basically the national security, and then he made the Iron Patriot because he was like, okay, the world needs Iron Man and Captain America. I'll just make both. Then what he did, he created the Dark Avengers, which were literally the Avengers as bad guys, but he dressed them up like the Avengers and said, "Here are my Avengers. They follow my thing." It's essentially the Suicide Squad, where he
Hmm.
literally said, "Okay, I'll give you like a reduced sentence if you work for me." And then with the Sentry, the thing about the Sentry is that he's a schizophrenic. He's also inhabited by this being called the Void, and whenever he does great good, the void does great evil. So in other words, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So what Norman told Bob Reynolds the Sentry is, hey, I used to have another personality in my head that I thought was going to do bad things. So I'll help you control it. So he essentially manipulated the Sentry into doing his bidding. Then he laid siege to Asgard and destroyed it with the Sentry. And it took the Avengers reconnecting to finally take him down.
Wow, that's a lot. And
Yeah,
that's
it's
honestly
it's a big story that's actually really good.
I mean, Lex, compared to Lex, honestly, that's a much bigger story than what Lex has had. Lex just seemed like he's more so jealous that he doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have the power. So it's kind of like it's very baseline villain, and just kind of like this very spoiled rich guy. And sometimes he's kind of like the trust fund baby too.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that with all the details, and I thank you
Mm-hmm.
for giving detailed descriptions of these stories because they are very, give
The story
much more
where that
depth.
happened, Britt, that was the first ever comic book trade I ever bought.
Mm,
It's
That is,
Marvel's The Siege of Asgard is where they get it's this epic story that like branches multiple years because what happened is after Secret Invasion to the end of the Siege of Asgard is known as the Dark Ages because the superheroes were underground while
mhm,
Norman Osborn and his Dark Avengers were the main superheroes because previous to this you had an event called Civil War where the government basically told the superheroes register and do our bidding or you can't be superheroes anymore or we'll lock you up in a prison in another dimension. And this is where like Captain America and Iron Man fought. It's kind of like Kingdom Come when you think about it. And
yeah,
so the Avengers were vulnerable, leads to the Skrull invasion. At the same time, Iron Man is the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he didn't see this coming. So the government saw him as like a failure. So they replaced him with Norman Osborn.
wow, yeah. I'm gonna have to read this.
It's really good. It's really good. I'll show you that. And then he literally so there's this great image where so it's the siege of Asgard, but the government now is turned against Norman and sees him as a threat. So all of a sudden, um one of the president is watching this on like a drone feed. And he goes, "Wait, so there's no one else we could send?" And then one of his aides goes, Mr. President, you might want to watch the feed because I think our salvation just arrived." And then you just see reflected in Norman's helmet that Captain America's shield get closer and closer and closer, and then get whack into Norman. And you can see the other Dark Avengers are like, "Oh no!" And then Thor shows up and beats the crap out of Osborn.
Wow.
Oh, and then Iron Man shows up, and then Iron Man can like remote pilot the armor. So he goes, "I'm gonna be taking my suit back." So the armor strips off Norman.
Well, that was humiliating.
Yeah, it was. And then Norman Osborn is put back in prison. But a lot of this is like really dope stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that is much more, like I said, much more in depth than what Lex has had, I believe.
Yeah.
You know, because Lex, like I said, he feels like a spoiled trust fund baby that wants more power. Or he just feels like he he's missing something and just wants power. And again, being president, it feels like that's still not enough, but he's manipulated the people to uh, vote for him. But also, he wants to pretty much have Superman at his feet. And that is something within the story that Clark can't do. So he has Diana to push him and like continue to fight. That again, we are pushing the champion of the oppressed again,
Mm-hmm.
instead of the one that becomes the government because he's given up. And he feels like, well, the people aren't listening to me, so I'm just gonna let it be. That's something that, even though Kingdom Come, I would say that Clark's initial reaction to that, it it worked for the story. I wouldn't take 10 years of him finally like uh you know of Diana continuing to push him to get himself out of isolation. 10 years is too long. However, the fact that still at the end he got back to how he was supposed to be and become the leader that he was supposed to be. And
It's
it
all,
was really
but
because
Britt,
of
I
Diana.
thought Diana separates Clark from humanity.
Yeah, again, the whole superficial and based on only opinions. I mean, they have an issue that if Diana calls him Cal, his birth name, she's taken away his humanity.
I'm like,
That.
no. But first off, she calls him Clark as well. Come on.
Yeah, and it's only because again they don't have appreciation for culture, and again with our hypothetical story and just the general purpose of these relationships is appreciation for culture, appreciation for otherness, and just because the two black characters are together, that doesn't mean anything bad. It's just.
And first off, I thought characters are supposed to be more than their skin color.
Well, it depends on the character and the narrative that fan base is trying to push, you know.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm
Yeah,
just saying it's like the idea that like it's like the same thing where the fans want Superman and want Superman to ignore his like cultural heritage of being Kryptonian, and I'm like, guys,
yeah. It
it's really hilarious how that ends up, right, Britt?
yeah. Um One more thing about the story.
Hmm.
I think we
Oh yeah,
are
conflicts and dynamics.
okay. So again, the villains, they're pretty much within a group, but of course, again, the backstabbing. They understand each other's strengths, but they are trying to kind of key in on each other's weaknesses because at some point, one of the villains feel like they are going to be on top. Um, and then you have where uh, Clark, Diana, Storm, and Black Panther confronts them. And again, it is more so with having. It's not a battle of punching. That's something that we like the action, but at the same time, and again within the climate of the world today, we need more of the spoken um with the fighting, that action. And especially with these characters of Superman and Wonder Woman and Storm and Black Panther, just period, because again what they represent. And with that is also just in a mirror to reality, and them going against corrupted government. you know that is something that we should see more often, because and the people should be inspired to continue to fight for what they believe in, and for equality, for respect within just society, because you have to go every day. You can't um, wake up, or go to bed thinking of, can you survive another day? Or is it something that's going to happen to where you lose something, or, something like that? You have to fight for y- your comforting way of living. That doesn't mean judge other people. That doesn't mean try to force a change that disrupts anyone else. It's just everyone be at peace, you know. And so within this, that is what they're fighting for people to be at peace. And again, you're emphasizing on the more an ambassador aspect of especially Diana.
Great work. All right. So final thing we're going to talk about is the themes of this story. So we have their different cultural backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
the pressures that both characters are placed on, and again, it's really the beauty of diversity.
Yeah, that's to sum it up, it is about respecting uh diversity. And, you know, again, even if with the corrupted government, with the ways of the world, and how it's kind of like you have to fall in line nowadays, and if you even try to have a different opinion, then you are deemed as the black sheep or something like that. And no, that is what the how the world pretty much goes around, is that you are embracing everyone's uniqueness, and that is also something that was in Throne of Atlantis. What Clark said is that it's not being a human in a sense of again, self-hatred or neglecting your heritage. It's just blending in, of accepting your uniqueness, and we are all just coming together to make what the world is. And that is kind of a shame that we went from that Clark that was accepting himself to the one in Death of Superman, when he was pretty much lying about who he was, and um, having again this self hatred, or this regret of who he was, just for this way of life he thinks that's much easier.
Yeah, where he was trying to hide himself from Lois, and I'm like, you literally in the previous in one of the previous movies was instructing Diana on how to embrace who you are but still be human, air quotes.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. I'm just like, what the heck is going on here, guys? Well, Tomasi and Jurgens, that's what's really happening.
Well, the thing is with Tomasi and Jurgens, they are still within the time of post crisis, which was very much, but the more you kind of look at, especially the early 2000s, of how it was very, they call it meat and potatoes of the conservativeness, and it's pretty much like the nuclear family, like just the basic Little House on the Prairie, Dennis the Menace, that 1950s sort of outlook on what the American way and American life is. And that is something that Jurgens and Tomasi pretty much agree upon, And what's weird is that Tomasi was an editor for Kingdom Come too. So it's kind of like his line of thinking is very, you was an editor of a very successful story that pretty much told the opposite. So why are you trying to? Yes, it was more so of the old ways are better, but that was more so about like limiting violence. How the heroes were turning more into anti-heroes, and and really glorifying uh is it violence. So again, that story you pretty much learn the wrong lessons from, in a
Yeah.
sense of going too overboard with how even Mark Wade, he says that Superman can't make mistakes, or he can't like fail. It's like, no, that's not what
You
you want.
literally wrote a story where he failed. What are you talking about?
He failed, but he learned from that and
Mm-hmm.
got back up. That
That's
is something.
that type of attitude is why people think Superman is boring.
Yes. You want that character development. You want these characters to be flawed. You want to show their flaws, but at the same time, their flaws doesn't break them. It just makes them stronger. It makes them, if you want these characters to be relatable, yeah, you want them to have flaws. But at the same time, they are still very much inspirational. because they don't give up the fight for other people.
And actually, Britt, I have a perfect flaw for Superman. You ready? He's married to Lois. That's a flaw. I thought that would get a laugh. There you go. But so why don't we do a quick Q&A before we wrap up? So those of you in the chat, you can ask us any questions relating to Superman, Wonder Woman, Black Panther, Storm, any couples that you guys would like to see us compare, because we're thinking of like Scott Summers and Emma Frost. And what we could do with that is also compare Scott Summers and Jean Grey and talk about which one of the two is better.
I would say, you know, that would be pretty cool to have a competition like of the couples as well.
Atchison brings up a good point. There's a lot of new 52 omnibuses coming out.
Because DC has basically ruined their trades. So they need the books that obviously sold to give them, to help them out a little bit more.
Yeah,
Because
exactly. It's like Brit. So they're making one for Red Lanterns. And do you know who wrote Red Lanterns?
Charles Soule. Now, if
Exactly.
he needs to come back from to DC.
Please come back. Replace Tom King on Wonder Woman, for the love of God, please.
Yeah, or at least do a Wonder Woman book with Clark being supporting.
No, exactly. Do that. Throw out Tom King's BS story, and then put Charles Soule in here. He'd definitely do a better job at it.
Yes. I mean, at least he actually wanted to write um more on the Amazons, and the fact that he introduced an Hestia, you know, a prominent older Amazon, and she was black at too. It was
Mm-hmm.
like, that was something that showed again the diversity that Superman and Wonder Woman was trying to represent and put forth. But where is she now? And now we don't really see that much of, even in the Wonder Woman book. I mean, you have Nubia that has been pushed, but it feels like that push is sort of, it's so now. Like, and I feel like it was because they were trying to um it was a possibility that with them doing the future state stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but it fell through. That is pretty much why they started pushing more for Nubia. And because, again, future state and 5G fell, that now they don't really have much going for them with Nubia, Yara,
Well, here's the other thing,
even
Britt. They needed someone to make the bi/gay Wonder Woman.
that too. That too.
Because they're never going to make Diana bi or gay. I'm still staying by it. But
But the
Ashley
thing
brings up a good.
is,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, but the thing is, they had Artemis and they also had Hippolyta.
Yeah, I
So
know, but they're not Wonder Woman. See, they wanted that name. By the way, Ashton brings up a good point. Did you also see that the Azzarello Wonder Woman is getting a compact edition? So he says, methinks her new 52 one was more popular than what the haters say it was. Methinks you are
oh,
correct, my good friend.
right, oh yeah, it definitely was more popular. I mean, even Jim Lee has acknowledged the popularity of the new 52 Wonder Woman. Yes, it's controversial, but it is the best selling
That's
after
not to
or
say
equal.
that's not to say that the run was perfect. It definitely wasn't,
Right,
but it
exactly.
was still enjoyable.
Yeah, they pretty Azzarello run and Perez are pretty much neck and neck. It's basically like Perez run is the golden standard. It is the perfect Wonder Woman run that really shows the innocence and the sunshine of Wonder Woman. And then as Azzarello is more of the darker kind, but you still have Diana is still compassionate, and still innocent within that run too.
But you know what's interesting about that Azzarello run? You know what it really did? here's the advantage, because we talk about a disadvantage is that it was largely separated from the DC universe. But you know why that may have been a good thing? It showed that Diana can work on her own without the DC universe as a character, that she can still sell well.
That's true. I mean,
I still,
even
don't get me wrong, I still would have liked it if like Superman of all people showed up, but I see how that run actually did a lot for her brand as well.
yeah, it did. And again, you can't just pitter patter with these characters. You have to have something interesting. And even Joshua Williamson, he uh, it sounded very the way it was within the article. He seemed peeved about it, but he said that controversy sells, but if you give like the happiness or whatever, that doesn't sell. It feels like there's a comfort to that. So fans don't really feel like supporting that, but they will hate buy.
Mm-hmm.
They will be curious of controversy. And while controversy can be damaging to the character, like Tom King with Diana hugging the American flag, it's selling, but you don't want that type of controversy where it's selling, but it's bad and it's a
Well,
bad
it's also
representation.
declining in terms of selling. That's the other thing.
Yeah,
Oh, and Byron
that's true.
Atchison asked, "Do you plan on doing any more of these couple compilations?" Yes. What
Yes.
we're gonna do, and Britt and I talked about this, we're gonna do every other week. It's gonna be a couple comparison, and they're all gonna be live, so you guys can. Yeah. I enjoy the new 52 run as well. It wasn't the best in my opinion, but it was still fun because as a fan of like Greek myth and like that was the first run I read that really like was exclusively that, because the other ones did have that, don't get me wrong, because it's Wonder Woman, but they also kind of went into like her being a superhero and stuff, but the other one felt like I was reading an actual Greek myth.
Yeah, I mean, the the plot points and, those were very interesting. I would say that the only controversy that hurts this run
The
was
Amazons.
the Amazons.
But here's the
And
thing, though. That's mythologically accurate to the Amazons, though.
yeah, it's true. And that's the thing is that New 52 was based on quote unquote realism. That's what it was. But for me, it did go a little bit too far because for the Amazons within the DC universe and how of what they became for themselves and what they're supposed to represent as in the Wonder Woman story, yeah, that was a little bit too far.
Okay, I
Um,
can see that.
with Zeus, though, I mean, I've made my stance that I can go either way, especially when it comes to storytelling of the 50-50 and pretty much the dysfunctional godly family drama.
And I will
But
say, Zeus with dreadlocks works for me.
yeah, that's honestly with having a dreadlock Zeus instead of the usual, you know, the, the generic kind of Zeus that looks
The
like
Moses Zeus, as I call him.
Moses, or sometimes he looks like
Saint
Santa
Nick.
Claus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There you go. There you
you know,
go.
it, it works. It pretty much works. And again, it didn't do the damage that fans want to claim though. It really didn't.
The fans always overestimate the damage like that the new 52 and the Snyderverse did. They blame all the problems now on the new 52 even happening.
And that
And I'm like,
was
if you didn't have the new 52, DC would not be around.
that's true. I mean, and that's the thing that so many fans just do not want to acknowledge. And I mean, Jared, we watched the DC documentary, and no, DC fans did not watch that documentary.
Well, when
They
they
don't even want to
did,
acknowledge it.
there were some people that watched it and it's like, why didn't the DC documentary talk about how Rebirth basically undid a lot of the damage? I'm like, because Rebirth was a mistake. DC's now starting to see that.
They're very much self-aware, but at the same time, even they don't want to acknowledge their self-awareness. That's pretty much the downfall of DC, because they keep pushing, they keep wanting to ignore the problems and pushing what fans want to ignore as well, you know. And like you, well, I would say Tomasi is gone and Jurgens. It seemed like he is pretty much grandfathered within DC, but he's regulated to miniseries that don't sell and specials. But these
Well,
older
he also can't work for DC anymore because he's exclusive at Ghost Machine.
Jurgens.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about Tomasi. Both BS guys. So you can see where I got confused there.
Yeah, I mean, same thing, same thing. But yeah, you have these older writers that are pretty much gone. However, the new writers, they are stuck with still the traditional ways and the laziness, and even if they try to have these new type of ideas, the ideas are very um overhyped, and it the impact just it feels very empty, you
Which is
know.
why I say DC has to start, honestly, at this point, stop giving these older writers work because first off, they only use them for nostalgia reasons. But second off, it's like those writers don't know how to write for today's audience. They've demonstrated that many times.
Yeah, that's pretty much their issue.
Exactly. And Ashton says we got so much cool DC merch and entertainment when the new 52 launched, like my phone case. It was truly the last time there was actual hype and excitement for DC. It's been downhill from there.
Right.
Yep.
I mean,
Genuine
you can
hype.
tell you don't have also that meme where it's the hello fellow kids and there's
Yeah.
the old guy. That's pretty much how DC is right now.
Yeah.
It's but even if they do have younger writers, I've seen where they've tried to like put in how new age sort of slang.
Oh, you
And
mean like when Marvel tried to do that whole what if Miles Morales was Thor, but it ended up offending everyone because they made it super offensive?
yes, and DC tried to do that a little bit, but they knew not to go too far with that. They
Yeah.
might try to put in some phrases or words, but it's kind of like DC is so old manish that you can tell that, you're trying too hard.
Oh,
Um, but as far as the merchandise, yeah, you can definitely tell that the quality and the amount of merch, like in DC doesn't have it anymore. Hot Topic and these other licensing, um, very trendy type shops, there isn't any more like promotion of that. There's even when DC tries to do like the special variant covers, like when they do the sweater weather covers or just things like that, the theme covers. It's just see New 52, they had the art was gorgeous and so, it had this sexiness to it.
yep.
But the art now, it just feels so it I would say Daniel Saint Pierre. His art is good, but it's something that it just feels kind of like
Sometimes Diana does look a little stiff, which here's the problem
exactly.
with that. Here's the problem with that, Brett, because I've seen his art in like Dark Crisis or like even in the DC All In special, and I'm like, where is this in Wonder Woman?
Yeah, it feels very like you said, stiff. And honestly, it's the way that Tom King also writes art.
That's true. That is true. And Tom King is known for writing emotionally stunted people.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, Diana, within these 14, 15 issues, even Tony Daniel, when he wrote 12 and 13 for Wonder Woman, Diana just, she didn't feel like Diana. And it was very stiff, especially with trying to force Diana to be romantic with Steve. It just pretty much, it was very cringe and very like not her. And the art comparison to Superman and Wonder Woman, it just wasn't there. Like the emotion and it it just really felt like a step down.
Yeah, and
Um,
by the way, Barry brings up there's also a large portion of the fan base that is stuck on traditions that weren't even alive to read or see for themselves, which is also weird. No, but again, it's what Britt and I said. A lot of these people say stuff without knowing what they're talking about because they want that Twitter interaction. They want those likes.
yeah, and honestly, the way, first of all, Twitter is a cesspool for negativity. You know,
That's just social
they,
media in general, too.
well, yeah, that too. And you can, and it's very sad that unless it's something being sexualized or if it's something that it's a rarity that if you are pretty much celebrating something that is very positive but kind of like family oriented, I mean, honestly, you would have to just go watch like cat videos or something to have that fluffy positivity. But with comics, with the way that Superman and Wonder Woman is supposed to be, yeah, you don't get that. You don't get that fluffiness. Like I said, the only way is the negativity or being sexualizing these characters, and it's very, very it's a double standard and very hypocritical that these same fans, even Jurgens, who say that Superman and Wonder Woman's relationship is about, if they can bang um, or saying how it was fanboy, um,
Pure and yeah, exactly.
yeah, if it was that, but yet they, sexualize Lois, or
Yeah,
stuff like that. It's very much a double standard there with these fan bases, and again, that's the problem of why DC can't get ahead, and they wonder why newer fans aren't investing in these characters long term.
exactly. Ashton says, heck, a lot of heroes of Martin in New 52 redesigns were dope, but unfortunately, DC did away with pretty much all of them. Yeah, exactly. If Crisis on Infinite Earths came out today, it would have been received with just as much backlash as the New 52 for erasing decades of continuity. Because here's the thing, it's like, here's the problem. A lot of fans see it as like, they're wiping away my childhood. And I go, no, go read it. You can still read it.
Yeah, they honestly, that was just more so. It's just more so that I want what I want to continue on, even though I don't even support it. I don't buy it.
Yeah, if you pirate books, if your thing is like I pirate books but exclude it, I'm if your thing if you're critiquing a certain thing but you don't buy the books, I'm sorry, your opinion is less valid.
Yeah, I mean, well, I would say the stance on pirating books, if you aren't financially able to, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but
Okay.
if you are very much a fan who appreciate the characters and everything, and you aren't, I would say that there's a difference between pirating the books and you're criticizing it and just kind of like being so negative and you're pretending as if you bought the book.
I'll tell you what here.
Then,
Don't be toxic. That's what I think we're trying to say here.
yeah. But if you are pirating the books and it's honestly a genuineness of you aren't able to financially support the book, but
Mm-hmm.
and you're more so open to being honest about that, then yeah, your opinion is very much validated
Yeah,
though.
yeah, yeah. Okay, good. I appreciate that. Barry Allen says, at that point, there's been a bunch of adaptations that show what they want. Like when DC doesn't give me Superman and Wonder Woman, I just watch scenes from the Deccan movie. Yeah. Or let me put it this way. When they decanonized it with Reborn, I still read the power couple trade. It's like, it doesn't make it any less valid.
Even Tony and Charles said that, I have proof that it's real. They were saying I drew it, I wrote it, it happened. Just because they did what they did in a very spirited way, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. We all read it. We all see the images. Even the ones that are raging and having a fit over on Twitter, they post the images. So, to
Thanks for
talk
giving
about
us
it.
free promotion.
Yeah, so I mean, it, fandom is fandom.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why, honestly, at this point, I'm just like, I'm just going to ignore you people and talk and hang out with the people that are actually nice people like Britt and luckily my viewers. So that's just me. But Greg Pak and Charles Sewell should have been the main writers for New 52 Superman New 52 Action Comics. Well, no, here's the thing. They had good writers. It's just they didn't have communication between the writers. Because remember, Grant was writing Action, and that takes place 5 years in the past. And obviously, if George Perez was writing Superman in the nowadays, he kind of needs to know what Grant is doing so he doesn't contradict him.
That's true. That was the one thing that New 52 had a hard time with was communication. And honestly, it went down to the writers and editors who they were clashing because again, they didn't want to cooperate with the fact that they had to do this reboot. Some still wanted the same old with Post Crisis, even though they knew that sales were in the gutter. They still wanted to keep Post Crisis going, and that is why we stuck with Jurgens and Tomasi and stuff. And it feels like they got their way with the rebirth, and where has that gotten DC now?
Yeah, exactly. And Barry Allen says, "Oh yeah, this is actually happening with Krakoa. But Krakoa is the orgy island the X-Men were on. They insisted it was bad, even though the concept was good, and they knew." Okay, so Brent, here's what happened with Krakoa. So
Hmm.
Jonathan Hickman came in, and he had this idea for the mutants, and he didn't really necessarily even do the orgy island. It was just like implied, but it wasn't really like explicitly shown. But anyway. So as soon as he got them on the island, so he had like a team of writers with him. But then after he got them on the island, they basically did a coup and wouldn't do anything he wanted them to do, even though it was his story. So literally it got to a point where he was like, I'm out, and he just left the book.
Oh, I
And
mean,
Hickman's a great writer. That's the thing. He revolutionized the Avengers.
yeah, I mean, some writers they are being taken advantage of, that they have good stories and everything like that. But editorial, it feels like sometimes editorial wants to throw their weight on the better writers, but then they pet or let the writers that aren't so good, have their way. And that's pretty much it. It feels like how DC is doing with Tom King. He, and especially because he is besties with James Gunn now, it feels like Tom King can do whatever he wants, even though it's damaging to the characters. He can still get away with things. But if you have a writer like Charles Soule or Hickman or Greg Pak, or anyone who's very neutral and very respectful, those are the ones that are treated unfairly.
Exactly. So I think that's a good place to leave this episode. We went on for almost 3 hours. Hey, great job. But so Britt, you have any stories you want to tease us with? And by the way, I have a grand total of 3 ideas.
Well, I didn't talk so much to her. You had like 10, so but probably within this, when we get off, you'll have more ideas. I know you will. But as far as stories, So chapter 3 is still ongoing with writing. There's a few one shots. I was planning on having them done today. However, personal things, lots of going on and very busy. So those need to be edited, but they are completed and needs to be uploaded. So with those, they're very much still the one shots that I've kind of had lingering and I'm finishing up on. Um, they are for tonight and for something special. It very much just those that emphasize on Clark and Diana's friendships, you know. And then there are some that I have shared with you, Jared, that inspired for Shelterverse. And like I said last week, I can't wait for us to share some of the ideas that we have for Shelterverse.
Oh, there's so many ideas we're gonna do. So, all right, stay heroic, everyone. Remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lane. She belongs to General Zod and Bizarro, Zois, and Max Sabat for life. We will see you later.